everybody. Welcome to Far From the Tree, a podcast where you can learn, laugh, and even cry with us, your host, mother and daughter duo, Jamie Dawn, that's me, and Tatiana Mazel. And I am an ICF leadership coach and astrologer. Tatiana is a resident therapist, and we are dedicated to be of service to others through our gifts and life experiences. So get comfy, come join us in the sacred space and grab your favorite beverage, and who knows what's going to show up today. But we haven't even scripted today. Hi, T. How are you?
Hi. Okay.
What's our weather like inside today?
Somber.
Somber weather. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was cloudy with a sprinkle of meatballs earlier.
What I thought.
But I went to the gym and that helped. So I was able to move that energy. But man, you and I were talking earlier today about how unsettled it was. And maybe I should timestamp this. It's what's today? July 12th, 2023. And yeah, there's a lot of big, weird, crazy energy going on. And I put it on this coming up week's Celestial Wisdom video that I, offer, is that people are feeling unsettled, we're feeling frustrated, we're walking through relationships shite. I mean, it's not easy. And what people are experiencing is not easy. So
I'm glad I'm not alone.
that you are not. Neither one of us are, even
Great.
beyond just the two of us. I mean, there's multiple people that I've talked to on a regular basis. I'm sure you have with your clients as well. That, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's up, And it's interesting because it's relative, right? I mean, my pain is my pain and it feels big to me because I'm the one in it, right? And if I go into a comparison mode of my feelings of anxiety or my feelings of sadness or worry or whatever are bigger than yours, and it doesn't serve, right?
No.
So, because it's very personal and it's very individual.
Yeah, that goes in line. I mean, I was telling you earlier about, probably yesterday, I need to stop minimizing the things that I've been through, stop minimizing the traumatic impact that certain events have had on me, just because they're not as, I don't categorize them as big of events as what other people have been through. But it doesn't matter, right? Your pain is your pain. And yes, it's relative, it's subjective. But if we continue to minimize our traumatic experiences, then we're doing exactly the thing that I tell people. I will be doing the exact thing I tell people not to, which is it needs a voice. It needs to have its time, or it's going to continue to fester. And I would say personally that I think I minimize it because I feel as though I have worked through it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still show up.
Well,
because it can show up in different ways.
Yeah, it reminds me of what you were talking about. Healing is a journey. We're never healed.
Yeah. I just saw something from one of my colleagues that said healing isn't 100%. It's not linear. We go backwards and forwards. So stop thinking you don't deserve love because you're not where you want to be, because you do. And that goes right in line, I think, with how I've been feeling lately too, which is like, I've regressed. I've regressed as a person. I don't know why I'm doing this work right now with other people when I don't have my shit together. But other times I show up and I'm on fire. Sometimes it's just the day or the week and I just need to work through it. So I actually have something to give to my clients. Like, I'm human too. We're working through stuff. I live a life. I've had a life before this present moment that I have to work through. And I have a life after this present moment that, yes, is waiting and it's untold, but it will require my attention.
Absolutely. I want to circle back to the minimizing and justifying. Because I agree. I think very often I can minimize or dismiss. I'll use the word dismiss better for me, where it's just like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's done. It's in the past. It's over. That sort of thing. It's very dismissive. And I watch how that often gets projected onto others as well, where, they may, and it usually happens in my closest relationships where, they may share something that it's like, well, this happened to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but you're fine now. And I take away from their experience, or I could, if they allow me to, take away from that experience and make them feel small or unseen, things like that. And so being really mindful not to do that. And so I'm going to offer this. I see you. I hear you. And yes, you're walking through your stuff. And it's okay to not have our shit together, because we teach what we most need to learn, as they say. And what we're walking through with our clients is, it helps us to be able to relate to them because we've been through it.
Mhm.
And I think too often that we have this perception that our clients expect us to be perfect, or they expect us to be the expert, true, the god or goddess or whatever, sitting there going, this is what you need to do and how you're going to resolve it. And we forget that really, what do they want most? It's for us to be present, to sit with them.
Right.
So,
Right. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, please.
I last week was sitting with that, I think, a lot, the perfectionism part of me needing to be perfect. And maybe it wasn't last week, or it was a couple weeks before, because I was talking with a couple about, conflict and resolution. And then here I find myself in a conflict, like, oh man, I messed up because I had a conflict. I'm like, Tatiana, it's about how you repair it. How do you come back together? How do you make amends? How do you make acknowledgments and take accountability? And that's what we did. And it was fine. And I sat with the uncomfortability of making a mistake or not being perfect in that moment. And that sucked. Ugh, that was just awful. I was just so unsettled. And I'm like, I can't even have this conversation until tomorrow, because I don't even know what I would say. And there's no point in me continuing to apologize for something I've already apologized for, which is all I would have done if I'd continued the conversation when I was feeling bogged down. And now I have to tell that couple that I need to change what I've said to them, because things change. My perspective has changed on it. The thing being, don't run and talk to your friends about your relationship. There's caveats to that. I didn't give them the caveats. There's sidebars. So if you go and complain to your friends all the time about your relationship, yeah, they're going to take your side. Don't do that. And that's probably what I should have led with, but I didn't. And what I need to add in is that part. And if there are people that are safe for you when you're really struggling, do go to them. Because oftentimes they're going to have a different perspective on what's happening. And if they know you really well, they can tell you, this is what I see in you. These are the patterns I've noticed. So it makes sense why you're feeling like this, or why you might think that, to validate, to provide perspective. And then you can take that into your relationship. You don't have to say, oh, I talked with so-and-so, right? Like, I've been thinking this over. I heard this point of view, and I want to talk about this with you because I think it might be a good thing for us to do. Because I have found myself this week talking a lot with you, talking a lot with Dana, my best friend, shout out, and needing that, because I need that validation of people that know me and have other experiences that I can take in. So it is important. There are some people that you might have to talk to. I think about From Scratch.
Oh, yeah.
And
A Netflix miniseries.
God, amazing. Please, anybody, if you haven't seen it, watch it, and grab a box of tissues when you do.
It's a
Fair warning.
tearjerker.
Absolutely.
Thanks for putting me onto that one.
Welcome. But there's a part where Zoe Saldana, her character, calls her dad and she's like, what do I do? And he said, you talk to your husband. And she hangs up and she's in dismay. She's in turmoil and agony on the inside because something's happening. And later her dad comes back and says, you can always call me if you need something. Like, we can talk. And I've been going back to that because, yes, talk to your partner. There are some things that you don't want to talk to with your friends about them until you've resolved that with your partner. But sometimes if you need fresh perspective, like, I'm stuck. I don't know why I'm feeling irritated with this. Do I have a right to be irritated with this? Keep it on yourself. But yeah, you might want that fresh perspective from somebody else.
Agreed. And you nailed it. It has to be somebody you feel safe with, that you can trust, that you don't feel judged, but
Mhm.
you do get that perspective of truth telling. And truth is relative also, because just because someone, let's say I'm talking to one of my girlfriends or you or whatever, I mean, you may give me an opportunity, a perspective, but if I hear it and it doesn't feel truth, I don't have to take it. It's just a
Mhm.
perspective, right? But it's also, as I say, our perceptions are our realities. If you're perceiving my behavior of changing, or my partner's behavior has changed, or the dynamics in our relationship has changed, there's something real about that. So I need to sit with it. You mentioned, do you process it with your partner and maybe tell your friends later if you want to, what you process? There are some things though that we process for ourselves that we don't need to process with anyone else, or as far as our partner is concerned. Like, if we talk about relationships, I'm going to put this on a real quick astrological piece, but today, like I mentioned, is July 12th. On July 23rd of 2023, Venus retrogrades. Venus is our planet of love, beauty, relationships, values, finances. Retrogrades in the sign of Leo. Leo is about the heart. It's about our heart's desire, being playful, creative, being on stage, being able to share things. And when Venus goes retrograde, it becomes more internalized, but also our relationships and how we feel within them and our heart connection is going to be really online. We're already getting a taste of that, like what's really important here for us. And so circling all of that back around to say, there's going to be some things within our relationships that we don't process with our partners because we brought them into the relationship, or it really has nothing to do with them, but it's our wounding.
Right.
And so that's where having a professional like yourself or me, or somebody, a neutral third party, can really help,
Mm-hmm.
or a
Yeah.
friend.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing I've been sitting with is I need to find a new therapist. I miss mine. And that's also part of why I feel like I've regressed and why I've been reaching out to others, is because I don't have one right now.
Mhm.
All therapists should have one. Granted, in the society, all people should have one, because therapy is not for just being diagnosed and medicated with stuff. It's how do you deal with real life? How do you deal with relationships? Can somebody help you navigate finding housing and a job, a different career, a education program? Counselors can do a lot of things. Do you want to philosophize for an hour?
Mhm.
Do you see a video that really speaks to you and you want to process the content and how it relates to you? Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm anxious, I need to like solve and cure my anxiety. Part of it, but we also need that human contact, that social interaction.
Mhm.
Having someone new and fresh gives that to us. So all that to say that yes, I need to find a new one.
We teach what we most need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two streams of consciousness flowing right now. I'm going to go with this one first, and that I'm going to stay where you're at on this one and just say that for me, a lot of my sessions with clients, yes, in the coaching world, it's about having something tangible and useful to walk away with because we've got goals that we're trying to reach. But 80% of my sessions end up becoming validation sessions where I'm validating them. And I'm saying, yeah, you're right on with your actions. You're right on with your intuition. You're right on with what's happening here. And keep going. A lot of times it's cheerleading, and encouraging and that sort of thing. And yet you mentioned the philosophizing for an hour. Yeah, I mean, that can happen too. And part of that is because I want to be able to help shift or reflect the belief system that has kept them stuck. Because our belief is what drives our behaviors. If I
Mhm.
believe I'm unlovable because I think I'm broken, how am I going to behave? What am I going to do in my relationships or even have one? Right. So it's
Right.
those kinds of things.
Right.
You know,
I,
yeah, go ahead. I'm
oh,
not
no,
going to switch gears.
I was just gonna say that I don't know if philosophize is a real word, but I only think of dodgeball when I say it. So, you know,
Dodgeball, that's cute. Tell me more about that one.
philosophizing.
Well,
Oh,
dodgeball.
well, Ben Stiller's character
Uh-huh.
when he's a what's his name, White Goodman.
Uh-huh.
He I can't remember which exact scene it was, but he walks in and he's like, "Oh, what? So now he's a philosophizer."
That's right.
Just he's got the hair and like terrible mustache. It's just the whole thing is awesome.
That's right. You know what? You're allowed to make up words because
Thank you.
yes,
I know
and I
you
gave
do.
birth to you. So
It's
yes.
fine.
So and unless we're someone like your brother, we're oceaning. Anyways,
See,
I digress.
I think about that often. I love it.
I
It's
know,
good.
I know the exact place on Independence Boulevard when he said that in the car.
Mhm.
What's voice we're oceaning? Sorry, little
The
brother.
word the word was recognition, by the way.
Yes. Oh God, I love it. Oh, and you know what? We are doing something right now that you and I talked about before, that when we're in these funks, when we're feeling unsettled, when, there's whatever's being stirred up and we've gotten so into our own little world. It's not that we don't give self-care and we don't think about ourselves, because there's that balance. But if we get so sucked into it, that's where the depression, sadness, and all that gets overwhelming. Go out and serve. How can I be of service to somebody? Think about somebody besides myself, you know? We talk about how there's some people out there who aren't quite sure what their quote unquote purpose in life is. What's the existence of being human? And my belief system is to be of service. And I don't
Mhm.
mean that in indentured servant. I mean that in a way that says, hey, I have a unique expression. How can I be of service to someone else? And using my unique expression, whether I get paid for it or not, doesn't matter. But I
Right.
give from that place of devotion.
Right. And that fills up your cup.
Yeah. People keep asking that question. We have our existential crisis that goes, why am I here? What's the meaning of life? To be of service. But unfortunately, there's so many humans, and I'm guilty of this occasionally, that we get so egocentric
Hmm.
and we lose that. We forget
Hmm.
about that, because one of the things, for those who are familiar with Nine Gates Mystery School, or if you're first time ever being introduced, we have vows, and the vows are conscious speech. I vow to you conscious speech, purity of heart, compassionate action, and a staff to be of service for all time. And that being of service, it'd be kind of cool. One of these days, maybe I'll read the whole vows or whatever. But to be of service, again, doesn't mean that you're a doormat or you're
Right.
this martyr. It means that you give without expecting anything in return. So,
And I think that speaks to true altruism, which we don't have a lot of these days. Do we give just to give? Not really. We usually expect something in return. It's usually tit for tat.
that's why so many humans don't trust each other. There's strings attached. You're
Hmm.
giving this to me because you want what from me,
Right.
right? If you do this for me, what do I have to do for you? Kind of
Hmm.
thing. And most people don't believe or trust that you just simply give, you know? And I
Hmm.
think, and because I think there's also that interesting dynamic of reciprocity and equal give and take in relationship. We'll circle back to the relationship piece. And there is that exchange that does need to happen to a certain extent. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't be in business for myself if I was just giving my gifts away for free, and there was a big controversy when I first started my business years ago about, well, you can't do intuitive work and get paid. That's a gift. And it's like, well, if my gift was gardening and I was sprucing up your garden, why wouldn't you pay me for it? So you're not going to pay me in carpetbag, and what is it, furs and spices anymore. You want to put a roof over my head and cook my dinners and pay for my car and all that. Fine, whatever. But
Mhm.
anyways, I mean, these are just the, where was I going with all this? Yeah, doesn't matter. We're just going to keep going.
When yeah, if it was a gift, it's a gift to you. It's your gift to do with what you will, and what you will is charge some money for it because you're providing a service. But it's a gift, it should be free. Well, then we should not have the social construct of currency, shouldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
But is that going to happen? No.
Nope. Nope. We're
People
just
love
good.
money.
Yes. And it is that very thing, when we love something to the place of imbalance, it holds too much power. So,
Yeah. I had seen a post yesterday about love, and I'm going to paraphrase it as best I can, that the true essence of love is not attaching ourselves to the person or our expectations, but truly allowing them to be an individual and to continue to show up for us and choose us. And that the risk of love is that we will continuously have our hearts broken only to make room for more love.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add to that. I heard a phrase about it's not our hearts that get broken, it's our expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one can break my heart. I'm not giving, it's my heart. I have it. But my expectations can be broken. My desires, my needs, when I've communicated them, can be unfulfilled. It can make it, the emotion that can get triggered is sadness and disappointment and frustrations and angers and all that. But as far as my heart is concerned, and it's interesting because heart has so many layers to it, just like love does. And I always appreciate the fact that love and the heart are synonymous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you think about it, the heart has that love of present personality, if you will, of preference. I love this, or I love that, or I love her, him, or whatever. But then you also have that higher love that layers into the heart, that it's not just eros, it turns into agape, which is I love simply because that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be in a relationship with somebody from both of those places, both the eros and the agape, that is a gift. And the partnerships that we're wanting, and we want to bring out the best in each other, and we still want to remain individuals, you know. And I always say that to me, some of the healthiest relationships are two individuals who have chosen to make a third thing called a relationship, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
lose their individuality, and that they're constantly feeding that third party, that relational field. And that you're right, even though there could be a breakdown at times, a conflict, that it actually can help grow the relational field. Like
Right.
you said, it's how you repair it.
Right. I think of the horse reins metaphor or analogy that Jessica Fern had referenced in her book Polysecure, where if you think of autonomy and connection as having reins on a horse, autonomy, say, in your left hand, and connection in your right, well, you steer the horse based on how you pull it. So if you're craving more autonomy, you're going to pull left, the horse is going to veer left. If you're craving more connection, you're going to pull right, it's going to go right. But if we keep doing this, we're just yanking the horse back and forth. It's about finding that balance and riding the horse forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the triggers for me over the last couple of weeks with my partner has been this idea of I'm gonna be a little coy just out of my own privacy. This idea of something from the past coming back to interfere, and that he could choose to give the attention to the past, which then would put me in a place of where I have to make a choice. And the thing that keeps running through my mind is, if that's what my partner needs to be happy, then that's what I want for him. But I get a choice whether I participate.
Mhm.
So, and that somehow soothes my soul, because that's what I would want from my part. If the tables were turned, if there was something from my past, or if there was something new even into the future, that I can't control, and it shows up, and my partner wants to pursue that, or I want to pursue that, I would want my partner to say, let's talk about it, of course. And if that's what you need in order to be the best version of yourself, by all means, pursue it. By all means, go for it, whatever. And then, of course, what do I choose? Because, for me personally, it wouldn't be conducive for my type of relationship dynamic. But
Right. I had heard someone say that for them with relationship, if their partner came home and said, I fell in love with somebody else, they would say, okay, bye. And I laughed and I'm like, well, that's nonchalant. They're like, I do not want to be in a relationship where someone doesn't want to be in a relationship with me. And I learned that from my parents. And I reflected on that and I thought to myself, well, for me, I learned to communicate as well as possible to make sure that no stone goes unturned to make a relationship work.
mhm, absolutely. I think, if nothing else, a conversation. But, one of the things that I've experienced personally and professionally is that when someone has their mind made up, usually it doesn't change.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So if the partner comes in and says, I'm done, I don't want this anymore, no cajoling and manipulating and forcing is going to necessarily change that. As a matter of fact, that makes it worse. The best thing you can do is to understand, what may have triggered it, what was missing, what's happened there. And but if the other partner isn't willing to change or anything, then there's nothing you can do.
Mm-mm.
And that's the
My
hardest part. Yeah.
the not changing part.
Yeah, not the feeling that you have no control, you can't change
Mm,
them.
right. For I think for me, it's not getting to that point without having conversations first. If you've had conversations and then you still say, I don't think this is for me, then you've overturned the stones.
Mhm.
But as far as walking in and saying, I think I'm done, there's a lot of questions and a lot of conversations that probably didn't happen, either because the other person didn't want to listen, or there wasn't the opportunity, or they didn't feel safe, or what have you, but that it didn't happen.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's probably the hardest part. And this is, again, going back to layers, relationship, love, matters of the heart, if you will, are very layered. Is that, if you are partnered with someone who is an avoidant, let's say, they don't want to talk about it. It doesn't feel safe because they're going to run, you know? And so, or if you're with an anxious, then I'm talking about attachment styles. If you're with an anxious person, it could feel smothering and exhausting. And then you just get to that place, you're like, I can't do this. Right. But if you can't have those conversations ahead of time, it's really unfair. And it's
Mhm.
hard. Those are hard.
Yeah, it's it is a work of its own. Communication, boundaries, understanding yourself. And they say that people that study psychology either want to figure out other people or themselves. Usually it's both. But at some point, to be perfectly honest, I just want to turn this brain thing off. And I don't know how to do that. I'm just like, can you just shut up for like 5 minutes so I can just be? I don't have to analyze anything. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to constantly work on myself. Can I just like have fun and zone out?
Yes, you do have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think that's the thing, is part of what I love is being able to work with others and give tools and then be able to implement them. And so when someone says, I just want to turn the mind off, what tools do we have to do that? there's meditation, there's substance, which I wouldn't highly recommend. Um, there is going in nature for a walk and being present in the moment. There's the mindfulness, if you will. But remember, our mind, our brain is different than our mind. Our mind is meant to think.
Mhm.
That is its function. But if we attach, and I'm getting a little Buddhist here, if we attach to every thought and we start creating a story, then what happens to that world? That's why I say our words create worlds, because our thoughts, the more we reify them, the more we think about it, we start going, oh, well, maybe this is what's happening. And oh, what if that doesn't happen? And then we all of a sudden, I can't tell you how many times I've been lost in translation, if you will, lost in my imagination, where I'll look and go, wow, 20 minutes just went by and I created this whole world. And now I feel anxious and I'm worried and, I got upset or whatever, right? I mean, how many hours a night does it keep us up?
Mhm.
So coming back to that present moment and saying, wait a minute, what's true for me right now? What's true right now? And I'll meet the next moment when it shows up, the next conversation when it shows up. One of the things that I see consternating so many of my clients is that they have no control over the future. And we talk so much about shaping it, or about, our choices today shape our future. Yes, to a certain extent. But guess what? The future hasn't happened yet. So just come back to the present moment.
Our choices today would shape our future linearly without input from others. And that is what we can't control for. And that is why it is constantly in flux.
Correct.
It is fluid.
Correct. There's so many moving parts to this human experience and so many things that are happening that influence. Like, I can plan a trip, but I can't control the weather. So if I leave on, Monday to go off to mystery school or esoteric school. And, if there's like all kinds of crazy weather happening, which there is, it's pretty hot around here, but anyways, but if like storms come in or whatever, I'm delayed. I remember flying back at Christmas time from South Carolina and sitting on the tarmac in Virginia. Well, I flew out of Virginia. Anyways, sitting on the tarmac for an hour and a half. So I missed my connecting flight. I had no control. All I wanted to do was get home. And
Yeah.
I had no control over it. Just like when you were traveling back after my surgery, you had that delay. So, yeah. And so again, I'm related back to relationships. We have no control over what the other person is going to do. And people get so wrapped around, I'm guilty of this from my past, where I would want to control the other person's behavior so that I could feel secure, so I could feel good. But
Mhm.
once I got it, once I felt in control, I lost respect for them. I didn't really want whatever they were presenting to me. I mean, it really bit me in the ass.
Mhm. Yeah. Asking for what we want and then getting it and then hating it once we get it. It's kind of like a double bind. We put ourselves there.
Yep. And we can put others in a double bind by assuming they should just know what we want. But then we ask them to show up that way. And when they do, they're just doing it because I asked them to.
Right.
It's like, seriously, don't put your partner in a no-win situation. That's, it's almost like looking for something wrong. You're going to find it.
Right.
You look hard enough, something's going to rub you wrong about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And
What is it
that,
you're willing to tolerate?
I was going to say, what are you willing to accept?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
We all come with our flaws and traumas and imperfections and things we need to work on. And who is it worth doing that with? You will face it regardless of who you're with. Is the person you're with worth it?
Right. It reminds me, it's interesting enough because it reminds me of a book called The Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And Baba G, one of the teachers at mystery school, he had said one time, he said, nothing's worth your peace.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner and I were sitting on the beach the other day, and we were having a snack or whatever. And he turns and he looks at me and says, I know you don't care about this. but sometimes I'll use whatever, you know, he shared what he shared. And what struck me wasn't what he was doing, because he's right, it didn't bother me, I don't care. But it was I know you don't care about this.
Mm.
And it triggered me because I was like, wow, do I come off as though I don't care about anything or anyone? I have to be, I'm reeling myself back to that, because I
Mhm.
don't, I mean, I'm pretty unflappable for the most part. I have moments, I mean, internally, I can be, you know, a storm, but externally, as far as how I communicate and react and that sort of thing, it's usually, I'm pretty calm. But I do have things that bother me. And that's part of where The Art of Not Giving a Fuck comes in, is that book was all about, you only care about the things that are meant for you to care about. Stop worrying about what others people are doing that isn't something that you're passionate about. It's not something that it's a cause or a hill you're going to die. No. So I think that's a big theme, especially as we're going through all this emotional turmoil and things like that that's being stirred up for us right now, is
Mhm.
picking and choosing our battles. Number one, you know, what is it that you really want to give your peace away? And number two, can I tolerate or accept this about the other individual that I'm interacting with?
Right.
So,
And if I can't, where does a boundary come in?
right. And can I love them for that flaw? What I
Mhm.
perceive as a flaw, they may not perceive it as a flaw, but can I
A
love them
quirk.
for it? Yes, a quirk, something different. Because I
Mhm.
can tell you, you know, the way that my partner communicates is not easy for a lot of people to hear, but it's his style. And the more you get to know him, the more you will see he's a big teddy bear.
Right.
And super sensitive, and you know, I mean, you can't be a first grade school teacher for 28 years and not have some sensitivity to you, you know.
Kind of
So
like an M&M.
M&M's good too, they're delicious.
A harder outer shell and then a soft middle.
Yes,
Or a Skittle, whatever.
right. But again, I mean, this is why there's not one person for one person, you know what I mean? Like, not everybody's cup of tea kind of thing. Is that,
Mhm.
again, it goes back to, you have to decide what works for you.
Right.
And if I really had an issue with the way he communicated, if it was a regular thing at me, yeah, there would be boundaries.
Mhm.
There would be a, oh, like there was, it's a silly incident, but the other day he answered his phone, yes. And I was like, well, that was very authoritarian. Am I intruding? And he softened. And he was just joking. It was just his way of, you know, but
Mhm.
even that, it was like, hello, I'm calling you out on it.
But he's receptive.
Yes. What are your thoughts on if someone says, I like you, I don't love you, but I want this relationship?
Mm.
It's a very hard limbo for people to be in.
Yeah, because I'm going to base it off of how I would feel is okay. How I would used to feel is believing their potential. Oh, you like me. That means you could love me in the future. But you also could not fall in love with me ever. But I'm not going to believe the other one, the second one, because I really like that first one. So let's see how long this can go. And then it's like, oh, how much time am I really going to invest in this? Am I going to keep pushing you? Now, I think if someone said that to me, I might ask what's the holdup? You know, what's the drawback? What do you need to deepen this? And then you get to make an informed decision. Because it's like, if I want love and you're not willing to give that to me, do I want to put myself in a place that feels half-assed?
Beautiful answer. Thank you. Because I know there'll be a few people watching this that they're in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, and I often ask the question in different relationship situations, as well as I hear this from others, is like, well, how long do I wait? How long do I walk through this? I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to, and it's like, it's really individual. Only you can decide,
I
you know?
mean, exactly. I know someone that's been in a marriage for 20 years that's like, they're getting divorced soon. Like, that's a long time to wait for someone to come around and change their behavior. You're really going to invest that much time? And some people will. And some people, I like you, but I don't love you and I want this relationship. That's not going to work for me on the spot.
Right.
I firmly believe that you deserve the love, the same amount of energy you bring into the relationship. I think I've said it before. Here's the thing, no one deserves abuse. However, if someone is beating you, you have every right to hit back, to defend yourself.
Right.
And then get out.
Right.
That's my personal stance. But if someone, I like you too, but I don't love you. Will you ever get there? Maybe. What's the holdup? I don't want to talk about it. If you're not willing to bring walls down for me, personally speaking, if you're not willing to let your walls down for me and let me in and be vulnerable and share with me and create this emotional intimacy and this bond, it ain't going to work because I require that. There are plenty of people that don't need emotional intimacy as much as some, but they might need sexual intimacy. If you guys can meet each other on that level, cool. As long as it works for you.
I still chuckle at how we as human beings wanted all the perfect relationship. Because one person may have the great job and be, good looking, and yet they're emotionally unavailable. Or maybe they're really emotionally available, but they can't hold a job down and you have to provide for them, whatever. I mean, there's all these things of like, people will go around and say, I've made a list of my perfect partner. Okay, good for you. And if they meet that, I'm not going to date anybody who doesn't check off all these boxes. And then years later, I'm still alone. There's things, again, what can you accept?
Mm-hmm.
And I've done this in the past, not making the list of the perfect partner, making the list of the partner I want to be. How do
I like
I
that.
want to show up in relationship? And I want to partner with someone who helps enhance that or complements it. Because
Right.
I can't control another person.
Right. But when you're around them, do they elevate you? Do they hold you accountable?
Right. I think one of the things too, I notice this in all of my relationships now, is that I spend the majority of my time interacting and being with the people who energize me the most. And that it changes. It's changed over time. Like even a couple of my girlfriends, we don't see each other very often anymore. And some of that is just because life has taken us in different directions, but we find ourselves not being able to relate as much to each other because of the way that some of our choices in life has taken us, And it's just it's one of those really interesting things.
The natural progression.
Yeah. But I mean, it goes back to, for me, how I feel. In other words, if I'm spending a majority of my time, especially my personal time, with someone who I end up feeling drained, I'm going to probably not do that very often.
Right.
So.
Right. But that's also, are they bringing that same energy to the relationship?
Right.
And if you're finding other relationships that energize you more because they are bringing that same energy, that's where you're going to put your time and attention.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, one thing I'll offer is relationships are going to be a big focal point, and individualism is another focal point for the next big 18 months. That's going to be a primary thing. And I'm pointing to it astrologically with the nodes of the moon changing signs from Scorpio Taurus, the North Node in Taurus, South Node Scorpio, into Aries Libra, Aries North Node, South Node Libra. Aries, the North Node, just a really small, brief thing. North Node is what we are striving for. It's what gives us purpose and passion in life. And then the South Node is what we bring into this life, already doing unconsciously, things from our past, if you will, some things we want to let go of or integrate into our current state. And so this is a collective energy that's happening as the nodes are changing signs. But individually, we're going to have some focal point, especially if you've got Aries Libra dominant in your chart, or another cardinal sign like Cancer, Capricorn. Those are going to be affected the most. But Libra is all about relationship. It wants relationship. It wants to have equilibrium in it. It needs to have balance and harmony. But how do we find balance? Can't find balance without extreme, without war, right? And then you have Aries, individualism, ruled by Mars, the god of war, creating this, I need my own space. I need to be able to express my own unique self, but I want to do it within partnership, within relationship. So we're going to learn
You targeted me.
Yes. So we're going to learn how to navigate relationships in a very different way. If we can let go of those things where we've created codependency, or that we've created imbalance, where there's lack of reciprocity, or we've compromised too much in relationship, we're going to start to find that we need to bring that back into balance by saying, I need some alone time, or I need to be able to pursue this interest because that's what feels good to me. And the key, and this is where I know you counsel people, but the key is to be able to still include your partner, to be able to say, listen, even though I'm off doing this, you're still important to me. And then how do we find a way to express that you're still important to me, you're still a priority, while I'm still going off and doing these things?
Right.
So
my favorite statement my partner ever said was, it's not you. I need some alone time. I love you. I'm going to go see a movie, go have fun with your friends. Thank you. Repeat that a lot. All the time when you leave, do that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too. I mean, my partner said even today, I went off to the gym for my 1 hour that I had carved out for it, and he was still here, and I come back and he's gone. And I was like, I called and I said, you left. And he said, yeah, I have to go do this and that. And I was like, oh, okay, he goes, but I'll be back. Oh, okay. That felt good. That little bit of reassurance of like, oh yeah, you're still here, because we didn't communicate before I left what was happening.
Right.
So yeah, speaking to what we need, but reassuring our partner, hey, I'm not abandoning you or us. Very important. I think that's a good note to end on, unless, so final words of wisdom.
I think so too. No, I think that's good.
Okay.
I feel as though got out some of my frazzled energy today.
What's the weather like now?
It's still somber, but it's not as heavy.
Excellent. Well, mine's not cloudy with meatballs.
Cloudy with unicorns?
It's actually more like on top of old spaghetti, all covered with cheese. I lost my poor meatball. Okay, we'll save the children's songs for another day.
I'll introduce them to Bar of Soap next time.
Oh, for sure. I can't believe most people haven't heard that one.
I memorized it because Lake couldn't stop singing it. It's great. Anyway.
Thanks for this time, the laughter, the wisdom, the love.
Processing.
Where can people find
space
you?
holding?
Yes.
They can find me at Psychology Today. I am with Pathways Family and Community Services for now. Wings of Fire LLC is mine and will be open when I'm fully licensed. But if anything I've said resonated with you, or if you have a bone to pick with anything I've said, please reach out. I'd love to talk about it.
Awesome. And you can find me at jamiedon.com and check out our YouTube channel, this podcast. Thanks so much for watching, listening, just being here with us, and share these liberally with your friends, family, whoever you might think might have interest. You've been watching, listening to Far From the Tree with Tatiana Maisel and Jamie Don. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. There's different kinds of grief that I think we should all be aware of too. But before I go into that, David Kessler, who has been my mentor for grief, has said, grief exists because love was there.